Ready? Good morning, everyone. This is the Streets and Transportation Committee meeting for March 17th of the City of Rehoboth Beach. Going to call the meeting to order at 2:02 p.m. Going to do a roll call attendance. David Diefendor,
Here.
Donna Mabry,
Here.
John Geiger is not present. David Mann is not present, and the chair is here. We have 3 out of 5 members, so we do have a quorum. We are missing 2 of our small committee. Do we want to, I'm going to look at you guys for guidance. Do we want to continue with the meeting or postpone when they can join us?
I'm good to, if you're good, I'm good to continue.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I
Same?
feel the same way.
Okay, great.
But it may as well
Um,
keep things moving.
I do have on the agenda first, for the record, the approval of minutes, which David sent out. Do you have any comments, any corrections?
No.
No.
I'm good with them.
Okay. Well, then I'm going to ask for a motion and a
Make a
second.
motion, we accept the minutes?
I would second that.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second to approve minutes. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And the minutes are approved. Correspondence, we have none reflected for the record. And on to new, old business, an update on the sharrows. I included that so we could get an update from Kevin, and he's not with us, so we will just get an update from him the next time. Also, next on the agenda is an update on the Grove Street and Columbia Avenue curbing. And Kevin's not here to update us on that either. Both are very, small things, but I want us to at least be updated on the progress. And third is the discussion related to the bicycle map and safety brochure. Last meeting, we looked at and received a presentation by the Homeowners Association. They would very much like us to adopt their brochure, put our stamp of approval on it, and take over publication, printing, and distribution of that. So since then, Donna, you shared with the committee the old
Yes.
brochure.
After our discussion, I just happened to find an old map that I had in a drawer at home.
Right.
And I was really impressed. I hadn't remembered it. This is the 2012 Bicycle Friendly Street Guide. So I just thought so we have proof the city has done this. It came out under the city stamp, and they would have had to have disseminated it. So this is what that guide looked like. I mean, it's really impressive. Here, the backside is all, big map with tons of information. And what's neat about this is, if you look at it, there are 12 panels that you can put information. So they have all kinds.
I'm going to put it up.
Okay.
She,
Yeah, I think it's just a great example, and what has been done, the artwork might be available. You can turn the other way? There, you see, that's, no, so up and down, vertical. No, vertical.
Oh, vertical. My apologies.
Okay, or maybe it doesn't show. But it just has a ton of information on it. Origins of Rehoboth, bicycle rules, places to go, numbers to call, events throughout the year, greetings from the mayor and the manager. So it was just very comprehensive. And now I think what the homeowners did, they've added stuff actually, like their diagrams for safely biking on the streets to avoid car doors, and that's helpful.
Right.
But
So I thank you for sending that, Donna. I think that was very good for us to see. Um, And I did ask the city staff, and I forwarded on to the committee, why this
Yeah.
stopped. And no one seemed to know why
Oh.
it stopped. So, so we don't have an answer to that, but the one that was created in 2012 is obviously contains a lot more information than what the homeowners association put together. So I think it's for us to decide how we proceed. Do we go back to the city and say, hey, let's do something as comprehensive as we did in 2012, or do we want to suggest that we adopt something with any modifications that the homeowners association did? That's for us to decide.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I guess it depends how much what's the cost to produce that? I mean, the city's gonna have to decide whether they wanna spend the money. That one looks a little bit maybe more extravagant. Yeah, I don't know whether the cost is more. The one that the homeowners association put out was good. I mean, I'd have to really dig into that and look at this old one a little more. But I think either one would be fine.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so. I guess I would need more information to answer that. I would want to know from the city if they've instituted other brochures that have taken the place of this. I'd want to see if this serves multiple functions. The past one serves multiple functions as far as events and things like that. I just want city input and other people's input as to what they thought would be most helpful, and the homeowners association, their input, what they would think about merging the two, or I would merge the two. I wouldn't take one over the other. I'd certainly take what is in the homeowners and add it to what the city has. Some of the stuff in the cities could be dropped, but it's multifunctional. And I don't know if the city has any other overview brochures that they routinely give out to visitors, because this passes as like a general brochure.
Yeah, I to my knowledge, I don't think we as a city produce a brochure that is widely used. I think we've got a parking one. And my guess is, and I don't know it to be true, but I suspect between Main Street and the Chamber of Commerce and some of the other guides that are out there, the city probably felt not the need to continue to produce an expensive brochure like that for things that, one, is already being produced by other groups, and two is, you know, we look up a lot more information on our phone than we do with paper nowadays. So,
And I'm not aware of what the Chamber of Commerce and Main Street are putting out. I can't think of that, or what are those in their magazine things? Their magazine, like?
yeah, a lot of them are in the magazine holders, you know, throughout the city.
But
And
they're bulkier. Now, I think this is different. It's not buried in a book, in a big booklet
yeah,
form. So this would be more handy, I think. I think the city definitely should have a brochure similar to this, an easy handout. But I think we need more input.
I think that the homeowners association is hoping that we take action soon so that there's something in place for the season. So if we want to move forward with the brochure that they put together and add items from the old brochure that we feel are missing, we could do that. We could just go in and suggest that we use that brochure this year and reevaluate at the end of the season what we should add next year.
If we delay and delay, then by the time we look at the whole thing and take it to an artist or a production place and add things, delete things, we're just not going to get it out in time.
Yeah.
I would agree with you to get something out, because theirs is about bicycle safety, right? So if we want to put bicycle safety out, we need to do it and move forward, and we can just keep looking at it as we go forth.
Yeah, I think we could make a motion, like, you know, encourage that this is used next year by the city and picked up so that it gets out for this coming season, and then also recommend that the city look at integrating this with the past bicycle map.
And we could look at that as we go forth, if we want to
Yeah.
see if there's things we could agree to change.
Yeah, and maybe the folks on the homeowners association would continue next year to look at putting together a brochure, integrating what they have and what things they would recommend picking up from the city.
Sure.
Or being on a committee to look at that.
We're fortunate to have Chief Banks here. Can I ask you if you've got any feedback or an opinion? I know you've gotten a lot of good feedback from state agencies on the brochure that we're using, and I'm sure that it would be helpful for your seasonal officers, for the public to be more educated on bicycle safety.
Yes, Commissioner. Any brochure we hand out, a lot of things that when we come in contact with people, usually it's warnings, quite honestly. If it's pedestrian, if it's bicyclist, it's whatever, it's usually a first stop is just giving them a warning. We're not necessarily writing them a ticket. So it's nice to have a brochure with information to hand out to them about our local laws and the best practices and where to get to. So it's always important, no matter if we adopt the old one or the new one from Country Club. Country Club Homeowner Association that put that together and all, it was a really good map for us to hand out. We used it. We ran out of them. So and we went ahead and gave those out to the bike shops and things like that too. So anything we can come up with to hand out's a plus.
So the police use these. They use these brochures, or they have them available and frequently pass things like this out.
Correct. The homeowner association gave us some, and because they thought we'd be able to distribute them a little bit better, some that we had. So we had them with the bike officers. So when they stopped someone or somebody had a question, we gave them out. We took them over to the bike shops, mopeds, things like that, and we handed those out to those businesses.
Oh, great, yeah. Well, I know a lot of what the police do are warnings and education. So I think the materials we give you for education is a big help.
Right. And as Commissioner mentioned, that the Office of Highway Safety was very impressed with it, just having an organization that was working towards safety or whatever with the city. So they thought that was really good, and they looked it over and made their comments, and the Homeowners Association adjusted it to their comments.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I think it would, to move forward and get something going, that we should recommend the city and take this over and endorse it this coming year.
I agree.
We've got members of the public, so I'm going to.
Back in 2012,
Yeah.
when that map was done, I believe if you go back into the minutes of the Streets and Transportation Committee, they were developing that map.
Oh, so that came from the Streets and Transportation Committee.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Pactaluzzi was the chair at the time.
Oh,
Wow.
interesting. Well,
Oh, great.
thank you.
Well, that makes sense.
We've got members of the public here, so I'm gonna ask if anyone has any comments or anything they want to say. Sure. Just state your name and address.
Hi, Carolyn Diefendorfer, 113 Newcastle. I'll just mention, I just Googled brochure on the city website, and a bicycle-friendly street guide came up under an agenda for the Beach and Boardwalk Committee in 2018. And it's a different brochure than either of the ones you all are looking at.
Okay. And what's it titled again?
Bicycle-friendly
Oh.
street guide, and it's got the city seal on it. And it came up under let me see if I can tell you, November 13th, 2018, Boardwalk and Beach Committee meeting agenda is what it came up under.
Thing.
That's the same
Okay.
title as this one.
Yeah.
Bicycle
but
friendly.
It's much smaller. It's much smaller, so it may be the stripped-down version of that.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's good. That's
But
good
I
to
mean,
know.
my personal opinion is have something ready that can be used this season, and maybe take the opportunity to have a more comprehensive one for the next year. I mean, I think you're running out of time at this point
Yeah.
to get something elaborate. And I do think it makes sense to have something for people, because they know the rules where they live, not necessarily here.
Yeah.
You know, I've had people on our street that are renters complain about, getting cited for riding the bikes on the sidewalks, and where they live, if they have kids, they're supposed to ride on the sidewalks with the children. and here you're not supposed to do that. So I do think there needs to be something that can be handed out.
Thank you
you.
very much.
Yeah.
Walter?
Appreciate the lady said, I think it was 8.5 by 11, the fold up.
Thank you. It sounds like we're inclined to move forward with asking the city to put our seal of approval on that, so to speak, with publishing and making that available for the public. And I'll just mention again, we were out of the generosity of the homeowners association, last year went forward and created this, and I think they printed 10,000 copies
I think
at a cost that they took on. So we would be making any minor modifications to this. I probably just putting the seal of the city on it, and then getting copies made to hand out to the public. If
One thing,
Yeah.
they did mention that they had spent money, they didn't want to spend any more money on it, and that this is what they had. And
Right.
They didn't really want to go back and change and everything, so I think we ought to go forth with that, too.
Yeah, agreed. I think the only thing that we may do is put the city seal on it if we're taking ownership of it. So with that, if we could get a motion and a second to
I'll
move
make a
forward in that
motion.
manner.
I make a motion that we ask the commissioners to endorse the Rehoboth Homeowners Association's Rehoboth Beach Map and Safety Tips brochure, and that the city take on publishing this brochure and the cost of printing it and distributing it to the public, making up to 10,000 copies, and that they have it ready for distribution this coming summer season. And
Thank you. Can I just suggest one friendly amendment?
yes,
One, I would just like to strike commissioners and just say the city.
The city?
Adopt.
That the city
If
adopt.
this can be handled administratively by the city manager, I'd prefer that we leave it
yeah,
open.
okay.
for
I'll
that.
amend that, yes, or that'd be the city. And I'd also like, would it be appropriate too to also add that we also would like the city to review this and integrate this current brochure with the city's past bicycle-friendly brochure for the season after this coming one.
I think that's fine. Thank you.
Yeah,
Second?
I would, just one thing about I'm not sure we should tell them how many copies to make. You said 10,000. I mean, it would be up to the city, wouldn't it? If they wanted.
Are you
if they
fine
needed
striking that part? Just leave it up to the discretion of the city?
Yeah,
On how many
well,
copies?
I would just to give them a ballpark idea what might be needed.
Right.
Okay, so you're fine striking
Sure.
that number? Okay.
Okay, I'd second that.
Okay, excellent. So we have a motion and a second on the floor. Any additional comments? All right, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, everyone, and thank you for the Homeowners Association for putting all the work and cost in that they have up to this point. I will forward on to the city manager what we've decided and let her use her discretion on how to move forward. Next on the agenda is discussion, and again, we may have no discussion, but I wanted to at least have an opportunity. The city of Rehoboth Beach is considering changing the abandoned vehicle ordinance, which essentially, when a vehicle is left in front of someone's property and that vehicle does not belong to the property owner for more than, I believe it's 2 days, the police can be called, the vehicle is noticed that it needs to be moved or it will be ticketed and towed in another 48 hours. And what the city is considering is changing that from 2 days to 7 days. So after 7 days, a homeowner can call and say, hey, this vehicle has been parked in front of my property. It's not my vehicle. Then the police will come out, they will notice it, and in 48 hours, it would be removed and ticketed. The rationale is we're a beach resort area, and people pay to, for weekly parking, et cetera. They've got to park somewhere. So is it unfair to have such a short time frame? So what the city staff has recommended, we're changing that from, I believe it's 24 or 48 hours to 7 days.
Now, does that also stipulate the person has to have a parking permit in their vehicle?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, so this applies to parked cars who have purchased a current parking permit,
Correct.
and so let's say someone let's say they bought 1 week permit, and then they went back and they bought a second week, and they put it in their car for a second week of parking in the same location. Now, would they be towed the second week? I guess my feeling is, as long as they have a valid parking permit, they can be parked there.
So the ordinance would stipulate that even if they, let's say they had one week parking permit, they didn't move their vehicle at all, they're still in the same spot, and then they went and purchased another parking permit for week number 2 and changed them out, that's irrelevant. Because they're parked in front of someone's house, the homeowner has the right to say, this car has been parked in front of my house too long.
Okay, now,
And
regarding the parking ticket, let's say the car that's parked there for overnight and doesn't have a parking permit, they could be towed the next day then?
I believe they would be ticketed. I'm not sure about towed.
Oh, okay. So now let's say they get ticketed.
That's correct, ticketed, not towed.
Okay, and then how many times could they be ticketed before they're towed?
I don't know that. Do we tow at all for that reason?
If you get too many tickets, it can be towed. The parking division takes care of that, so I'm not familiar. But it's cumulative of how many tickets are on there, how much money is involved before it triggers.
Well, so you think they do have a guideline, how many tickets or how much money, so that it,
Correct.
but
But this ordinance would not really apply to that. It is strictly based on just being parked in front of someone's property if you're not the homeowner. And it doesn't matter what type of permit you have, whether it's transferable or not, or weekly or seasonal, all of that is irrelevant. In fact, just by way of an example, Donna, if you were parked in front of your neighbor's house with your, permanent
right,
sticker,
right.
they could call and have you towed
Oh,
after,
yeah, I can't
after
support.
24 hours.
Yeah, but there's already an existing law for 2 days, so we're looking to expand it to 7 days.
To 7
So we're not talking about creating a new ordinance, there's already a 2-day ordinance.
Applying to those with good parking permits. People who have relevant parking permits, if
Right.
they're parked someplace more than 2 days, they can be towed?
Currently, yeah.
Is that really the law? Did that law go in before we had the permits?
I have no idea how long it's been on the books, but I imagine it's been quite a long time.
So the point is, it's on the books now, and the point is, we're looking to go from 2 days to 7 days. So when a renter comes in and he rents for 7 days or whatever, that he might not move that car. So going from 2 to 7 is way better because you're already
Sure, I
on the
definitely-
2 right now.
I'd definitely go with that, but I can even see residents going on a trip, leaving their cars parked on the street. They could be gone for 2 weeks.
Possible.
I
Someone has to call.
I guess I have trouble that a car that has a valid parking sticker for the street would be towed at all. I think what I've heard people complaining about those cars that are parked there, they're covered in dust, and I don't think they've got any parking tag on them.
So we've got a few options here, right? We can do nothing, and just let the mayor and commissioners do what they
They're
will
going to do.
Or we can say, no, we recommend you leave it as is, We can say, yes, thumbs up, we endorse it changing to 7 days, or we can say, make it longer than 7 days. Why aren't you considering that? So those are 3 options or 4 options that we can take.
So there is one thing about, so my wife and I have talked about, there are some houses that don't have driveways at all because they're an older house, so they have driveways, so they have to park in the street. So if they're parked in front of their own spot, no one's gonna call on them, obviously. But they could, a homeowner could get in that situation right now. He could park next to a neighbor. He doesn't have a driveway, so he could be called on that right now. So we just have to remember that. But again, the law is already in there 2 days right now. So I would be in favor of moving it to 7 days.
Well, I would even think that if I were a resident on my block and I see a car that's parked at the end of the block, not in front of my house, but in front of my neighbor's house, and maybe they're not there, I don't know why I couldn't call about that car. I mean, I don't think it has to be in front of your own house.
It does.
It does?
It does. And I'll let the chief confirm this, but the person that is complaining has to be the homeowner of the house that it's in front of. I believe that's true.
I'll say that's the common practice, yes, because again, if Park Division or a police officer has no idea whose car, if it's somebody's renting their house out, then that's where they're staying. It's just no way for us to know. So somebody with standing would call the police. It's the same thing, 2 separate incidents, but it's the same thing about blocking a driveway. A homeowner would contact the police if somebody's blocking their driveway.
Well, yes.
So we don't go looking for that because it could be the homeowner blocked their own driveway. So my point being is it is the homeowner or somebody with standing. So I guess it could be somebody rented their property and so they have standing. So I guess that's the terminology that I would use. But yes. Now, you made the comment about the scenario if you see a neighbor down the street, they're not there for 2 days. It's a public street, so if it's not affecting anything, we really wouldn't give a ticket to somebody for that. If they bought a legal permit and they're down the street, that homeowner's not affected by it, that property.
Well, I think if they've got a
shouldn't be
legal
giving them-
permit, I would question towing them at all. But no, I think you have to look at it also from a neighborhood watch. If I'm a neighbor and I'm watching my block and I see someone breaking into a neighbor's, I'm allowed to call the police and say there's a violation here.
Yes.
So I would think that would apply to this idea of having illegally overparked cars on the block, you know? So to me, that's the same. But I think there are a lot of wrinkles to this. But no, I mean, I definitely think that the commissioners should change what is currently there. And I would be willing to, or I would support it, extending it even beyond 7 days. Or I would even, like I said, factor in this idea about having legal parking tags, permits on the street.
So I've had instance where in front of our house, a couple summers ago, and he did it for 2 years. He parked his, I don't know, it was like a 12-foot, 10-foot, 12-foot van, big van, double-decker van, I'll call it, blocked the house. And it gets annoying. Quite honestly, it gets annoying after 7 days. That car needs to move. He needs to go somewhere else. So I would be in favor of having some limit on there, but we'd have to say, you'd have to be said when you buy that, it has to be clearly stated that when you buy that ticket, you only have 7 days, you have to move this car.
It certainly would be,
You know.
there would be a disclaimer on them.
I think.
So again, we can stay silent. We can make a statement in support to the mayor and commissioners.
I would make a
Whatever
motion.
you guys would like.
I would make a motion to move it from 2 days to 7 days. Now, the one question would be, before I make that motion, if someone comes in on a Saturday and they leave on a Saturday, should it be 8 days? Saturday to Saturday is 8 days. Should we give them a week?
I think the way what's being considered is a 7 day, 7 days parked, and then adding a 2 day notice period
Okay.
on. So it would essentially be 9 days.
Okay, so that would be long enough for somebody with renting for a week.
Dave, could you see extending it to 14 days?
Well, if you said 14, you could say 21, or you could say 28.
Yeah, well, I'm just,
I'd personally rather keep it at 7. And then if someone, most people rent for a week, some rent for 2, well, some rent for 30 days. But they should move their car after 7 days, in my feeling.
okay. Well, or how about we could have a motion saying that we support the commissioners updating this particular regulation? Just saying updating it, that 2 days seems too short.
And what is they're right now looking to make it 7? Is that what they're saying?
That is what city staff has recommended.
City staff recommended 7.
So that's what's being presented.
Well, I would make a motion to agree with the city staff and change it from 2 days to 7 days. I would agree with the staff that has made that decision. That would be my motion.
So we have a motion on the floor.
Are you going to add the amendment as long as the parking pass indicates they can only park, it's only good for one place for 7 days and they have to move it after the 7th day? That be?
Definitely needs to be noted when you buy that parking pass.
Okay, that they would get a 2-day warning at the 7 days?
I would assume this is already in the when you buy a parking pass, because there's already a 2-day, so it must say that.
It's currently not noticed.
It's not noticed?
No.
So we should tell them.
And I think the city staff has already looked at, they're administratively dealing with a proper notice. I think we already have our parking passes, so it'll be a sticker that goes on them, but they've thought through the administrative aspect of this.
I'll second.
So we have a motion.
Let's end this.
We have a motion that is that's stating that the Streets and Transportation Committee is endorsing the change of the abandoned vehicle ordinance from 1 or 2 days, I can't remember what it is, to 7 days plus a notice period. We're endorsing that recommendation by city staff. We've got a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? And the chair also votes aye. So I will relay our endorsement, and I apologize. I did not ask for public comment. On to new business, and I put this on here for you, Donna. Discussion of parking and unloading of delivery vehicles and the impact on traffic flow. So I'll let you take it away.
Right. Well, I look at this committee as having responsibility to look to improve things throughout the city and to try to identify problems and possible solutions. And I think one problem that's there that this committee's not discussed in depth at any time is the delivery vehicles and how they park around town and their impact on traffic flow and how often they are obstacles. They're just obstacles where they are blocking a lane of traffic on Rehoboth Avenue in particular for hours at a time. And the way I look at it, I think it is a problem, and I think it hurts everybody in town when we have those roadblocks. And you think about it like on an interstate, sometimes when you get caught up in a traffic jam and you're waiting to go 20, 30 minutes to go a mile or two, and when you finally get to where the blockage is, it's just one lane has been blocked off. It's one lane's been blocked off, and the two lanes are having to merge. And that's essentially what's happening on Rehoboth Avenue all the time with the delivery trucks. So I think that hurts everybody. I think that hurts the shop owners. I think anytime there's anything in town that causes an obstacle or a blockage, that discourages people from coming into town, and then that hurts the shop owners when people aren't coming into town. It just gives them another reason to avoid Rehoboth. And so, and I just think we step back and take a look at this issue and, look at what are the city's current regulations, Is there a way to tweak them? Is there a way to do something to improve that? And and I just know I personally, that I live on this, it's affected me. That I've noticed for myself that I used to, coming into town, I'd drive down to maybe 2nd Street, then turn south to go to South Rehoboth where I live. Well, you know, that became a more busy intersection, and I quit using 2nd Street. Then I started using Scarborough near Lingo's Realty. And that was fine until I started realizing I always, as I went east, there was often a truck in front of Dogfish. There was, you know, a delivery truck, a tour bus, whatever, and at all times of the day, so that, you know, after doing that half dozen or more times, I thought, well, I'm not going to bother coming this way, so I started going off at the Circle. Okay, now that I think about the Circle getting dangerous, I may turn at Canal Street, but what I've been doing is training myself now to not use Rehoboth Avenue at all, but to use State Street and 1B. And I started doing that this summer. Now, and when I think back on, I think the impact to me, I'm not going up and down Rehoboth Avenue. And in a way, it's become out of sight, out of mind. And that I am, even though I live in town, I am more distant from it. So now, and I think I'm just an example of how this impacts frequent visitors to Rehoboth. And so, I just think we look at this delivery issue, the delivery truck issue, and if we can improve it. So it's less of an obstacle and less of a discouragement for people coming into town. And and I really think it's important that, well, we've done a lot for bicycle safety. We focused on that. I think it's important to think about the flow of traffic, car traffic around town, so that it can flow, it doesn't get hung up. And that if people can get where they want, that's a good thing. And that helps everybody. And I think it helps the shop owners in particular, that, you know, we keep people coming into Rehoboth. So I guess in approaching this problem, that we get other people's input, what they think about it. I think we look, I'm not even sure what the city's current regulations are about it. You know, I'm sure there are some. I know there's some designated parking spots around town. But I think we look at that. I think we look at, you know, brainstorm what could be the options and get staff input into what we might do.
David, any thoughts from you?
I do. So I can understand if delivery vehicles blocking a road causes frustration. On the other side, these shops have to get delivery vehicles, you know, they have to, supplies, they have to bring stuff into there's no way around that, or they can't sell anything, they can't make any money. So is there an ordinance like of time, do you know, that the delivery vehicle can block a road, can come in? Do you know? I have no idea.
Chief, we're putting you on the spot.
That's
again.
why he's getting paid.
Well, no, currently, good question. Currently, there is no time mechanism. I will say back in 2014, and why I remember that is the current city manager, Sharon Lynn, came on, and we tried doing that, and we had meetings with the chamber and business owners, and it went nowhere, I can tell you. We even talked about at that time one-way streets, so delivery trucks could line up and have designated times for the trucks and set aside some regulations on the corners and all that to the bigger restaurants, Nicola's, Grotto's, things like that. There was 3 or 4, maybe 5 meetings at different businesses, and it was packed every time, home and even here at City Hall. Businesses were not in favor for that. You have to understand some of their viewpoint is, well, deliveries come from Baltimore. Some of their fresh fish and things like that, seafood, they don't get here to a certain time anyway. Others would have to pay employees to open up the doors for early morning deliveries. They were totally against it, so it kind of did not get kicked off. So it is a topic that's always going to be there. We probably could be revisited, but know that it's a big problem. And again, when we did streetscape, these bigger trucks have nowhere to park. So where do you want them to park at? You know, we have mass transient up at the top of the boardwalk. So technically the trucks not supposed to park there, but they have to because they're trying to back in when it was for iBox and Thrashers and different things like that. Or they're at the front of the head of the, not the boardwalk, but in front of the restrooms. Well, that's mass transit for dark to drop off there. So that comes an issue. We're constantly having an officer there to move them up as far as we can. And then you have businesses, well, I don't like that truck there or the Coca-Cola because they're trying to find a spot long enough for their truck to sit there, and then they're hitting multiple stores. So they could be in that area for, 40 minutes to 2 hours and things. So it is very complex. So if it takes it on, know that it's not going to be overnight, and you're going to get a lot of, I won't say pushback, but you'll get a lot of opinions.
But now, so
Is
the,
it getting worse? Yes, there's a lot more vehicles.
yeah. And so the current thing, they can park wherever they want on Rehoboth Avenue? Or are there designated parking areas?
The reality is we have designated parking areas, but they're not big enough for trucks to back in. And in busy summertime, they can't back a truck up.
Okay, and where are those designated parking areas now?
Well, one is, you'll see the loading zones. That's the loading zones around that is the designated parking areas.
Down by the boardwalk and the candy store?
Yes.
Like there's a long way, they can back in there, just one spot there?
Yes. And so where do you go if you're on third block, Rehoboth Avenue, and you have to sit there and stop? There's some, we even had this with UPS and FedEx and all that. You see them backing in trying to get, it's just these vehicles are larger and they don't have the room to back up, and they have to be somewhat close to their proximity. One thing we learned going through that process in 14 was union contracts. Delivery vehicles can only be so far away from their destination, especially with alcohol and all that, how far the driver has to carry that or move it. And I'm sure that's not the
Do you
only
recall how
ones.
far that was?
I don't call right now. So you run into all kinds of options. Like I said, somebody being there to open up early morning, deliveries coming across the Bay Bridge later in the afternoon, and all. So it's complex. It can be taken on, but I guess we're in the
But
weeds
there's-
now. To answer the original question, there's no time.
There's no
times right
time when
now.
they have to come in, or how long they can be parked in a place, or where they park.
Correct. I mean, we try to move them on if they're on Rehoboth Avenue, and we try to make sure they're not going to eat on lunch break while they're delivering in the truck sitting in the middle near the intersections. But and we try to make sure, especially Baltimore Avenue, that they're lined up behind each other, so it's not like a slalom course. So we're constantly monitoring that and looking out for it. And believe me, they want to get out. The delivery vehicles want to get out just as fast as others want them out of there. So they are really going as fast as they can get out, because they're listening to people backing out of parking spaces, beeping the horn at them to get moving, and they're taking the ramps up and down. So they really, truly are not
The
just.
truckers would like to
take
have a
down.
better situation
Yes,
themselves and
I
not
mean,
block it,
and
and so they can do their work without the risk they have, the traffic around
Correct.
them.
So I just want to sit down and point out that both sides see the complex issue is how do you sit there and fix it? And that's something else. These trucking companies were involved in those meetings too. So it wasn't like they snubbed it and they weren't concerned. They just want to make sure that it's palatable and that it works for them.
Yeah, I remember that back in 2014, and Chief, like you mentioned, the thought of one-way streets to help was considered then, and I know in the Baltimore-Wilmington Streetscape Task Force, we considered one-way streets again during that time, and that was a hard no from, I think, all the committee members. When I think about what are the solutions, right? And I think of two things. One, a lot of municipalities will have a time period where deliveries have to be made, or you have more loading and unloading zones. And in Rehoboth Beach, where parking is already incredibly limited, No one wants to give up parking and revenue to have more loading and unloading zones throughout town. So, you know, and the chief articulated some of the concerns and challenges with time periods, delivery time periods. And you know, I think a lot of businesses back, you know, 6 years ago or 7 years ago articulated those, you know, we need fresh seafood coming from Baltimore. We've got, you know, truck drivers dealing with the Bay Bridge being backed up and, you know, whatever the case may be. But practically, those are the two things that you can do to solve the problem.
Right, well, I wondered if I'm surprised we only have the one designated place for parking now.
No, I'm sorry, there are several up and down the avenue. It's just wherever you see a loading zone, there's not a whole lot, but it's usually a parking space. So again, we're talking about tractor trailers, semis, and all that had the
So the
problem.
designated loading and unloading, is it just a single regular car parking space?
For the most part, all right.
But
You
there's
do
no-
have the one by Candy Kitchen, as you mentioned, that they can back in.
There's probably at
But there's
least
stuff
one
get-
per block,
Yes.
at least.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I kind of thought maybe at Wilmington, seems like the big trucks back in there by Gus and Gus's, but Gus and Gus at the boardwalk. So I didn't know if that was another designated spot.
No, there's a loading zone up there, and there's a fire lane and all that. But again, these Cisco trucks, other semi trucks, just don't have the room, so they back up there. They really don't have a choice, and it's only going to get worse for them. Thinking forward is if the hotel goes in and things like that,
Yeah.
more deliveries and all. So it is a problem. We recognize it. We try to work. I will tell you, the drivers are respectful when we sit there and talk to them about moving up, moving back. They're really looking for guidance, you know, but it really comes down to they have a job to do, and I can assure you again, they want to get out of here as fast as possible.
And when do you think the trucks are coming through? Or how often, how late throughout the day do they come in?
It's all day long. Early morning, afternoon, right up the evening, they're coming. It depends how backed up they are on the highway if you're getting in and if a late call came in. Again, it's not always tractor trailers. It could be somebody local making a delivery with vegetables from a local market, you know, down the street. So that's bringing stuff in before they close for the night.
But
I've worked
agree,
at several
it's-
businesses down here growing up, and one was at a bar down in Dewey Beach. So when you run out of beer, you need beer. I mean, so it comes in at different times and different. I've worked at T-shirt shops where things come in different. It's all during the day.
Businesses have multiple businesses, so maybe they're bringing some supplies from Ocean City to Rehoboth or from some other area, from another store that they have for when they need supplies. So it's all times, the day and night.
Well, I think one thing that I'm aware, two things I'm aware of that are different now than 2014, that maybe makes it feasible to look at this. Well, number one, I think we found out in Rehoboth that parking has gone up all over. You know, we're generating a lot of money in parking. So I think the idea of taking parking spaces for another purpose and losing parking revenue is not such a big issue now as it was a couple years ago, okay? And so I could see maybe loading zones create, good-sized loading zones created along the curb for designated hours, maybe from 8 a.m. to noon or 1 or something, that those would be, and you take that parking off the street and designate it for big trucks. But they have to be out of there in a certain time. Then that frees that parking up for later in the afternoon and the evening. So I think that's different as far as how much revenue we're collecting with parking. So I don't think it would hurt revenue to do some more designated curbside loading zones. And the other thing too that's happened in town, another model that might be helpful, like if it were designated like for early morning, and that businesses don't like that. Well, what the thing that's different is that the city passed the trash pickup timeframes, where you have to have your trash, can't put it out on the street till, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and you've got to have your trash cans off the street by the next morning, okay?
Yeah, but remember, that's residential, and the city does not deal with the commercial
No,
trash at
no,
all.
but my point is, that caused a lot of disturbance throughout town, but people, private businesses have sprung up to accommodate that, where we have these trash caddy services that have developed, where people hire someone to come in and move their trash caddies. Now, so that's just a model. Maybe that's, a business that could develop in town through the Chamber, Main Street, or whatever, that you have people who come in and help, come in early to help your deliveries get into your store. So I'm just saying that's a model. That's different. We've got a proven track record that works. Maybe that would address the store owners' concerns about coming early for their deliveries. And maybe the fact that we've increased the parking revenues already, that we could afford to have some more designated curbside parking.
So the one thing about that curbside parking, I hear you. So if you, say you blocked off five spots or whatever, and you have a semi truck coming in, he still can't get into there to not block that road, because if you ever driven a large military vehicle or any vehicle, you have to pull in. You can't pull in without blocking that road.
How about if at the end of a block, and that if you put it at the end of a block, they got a little more maneuverability.
A little easier.
Yeah, it'd have to be at the end of a block.
Because you start backing up on Rehoboth Avenue, forget about it. He's only there by himself, and then he can't see, then it's another safety hazard. So there's something Chief, I know I asked you this before, is there an ordinance that covers this at all that we could look at offline
Yeah.
and then figure out where we
The
got to
only
go?
ordinances are the standard ordinances about parking in loading zones and parking in front of fire lanes, things like that. Just your
Okay.
general rules. There's no other times associated with that at all. Again, and not to, I'm sorry, Commissioner, if I can just finish with this. Anything come up with, again, that's why it has to be a lot of people here at the table, because if you pay a lot of rent for your business, you do not want a truck sitting for 4 hours for loading zone. Nobody else can park in front of your store to come in to visit. Well, that's going to be the argument. I'm not for or against. I'm just saying that that's why you have to have a lot of people at the table.
Yeah, it sounds like that, and that's been through that. But again, I guess my point of view is it helps all the businesses. I mean, if a lot of times they're just looking what's around their immediate vicinity, but when you think about it, you wouldn't want roadblocks on Rehoboth Avenue day in and any hours of the day that blocks the traffic. And if people can't get into town, that hurts them all to start with. So, I didn't realize the discussion in 2014 about it. I'd heard some things. But
I remember it's one of the first things that Sharon sort of dealt with when she first was hired as the city manager.
well, I guess it's up to the.
I don't see practically how we can lose more parking spots to create more loading and unloading zones. As Dave said, you're still going to have these large vehicles that are not going to be able to.
I think they could get in there on the end of the blocks, but part of it would be that it would be time limited on the curbside loading zones. Like that's what most towns do. You can't. It's a loading zone until 2 p.m. or 3 p.m. And so that it's not like the store owners would lose that parking in front of their shop the whole time. They just lose it part of the day, and. I mean, it wouldn't be for 12 hours a day for that. But
Well, what we can do is continue this continued discussion. I'd like to hear from the other two members of the committee if
Yeah.
they've got some thoughts and opinions on it.
yeah, I think we need a lot of input. And,
I agree.
well, thanks. I'm glad. Good you were here with the input and that.
Yeah, Chief, thank you for your input. That is the agenda. So we went through everything pretty quickly. Are there any additional items that we want to bring forward at a future meeting? Anything that you can think of? Chief, any safety issues that you think the committee needs to?
Nothing identified except what the committee's already working on and bringing forward.
Okay, great, thank you. And I will, our next meeting will be at 2 o'clock on the third Thursday of April, which I believe is the 21st.
April 21st?
Yes.
Oh,
And I will mention that a part of our meeting tomorrow, the mayor and commissioners meeting, I will be bringing forward I've already updated the commissioners, but we will be discussing the no left turns. And we will be discussing asking DelDOT to look at that crosswalk between 4th and 5th Street as they're considering the repaving of Rehoboth Avenue. So those two items will be discussed tomorrow.
and you're just going to bring the map up with administration, not with the commissioners?
I may give a oral update on that, but I will email it to the city manager and let her use her discretion on how best to move it forward. Yeah, I'm not sure that needs a vote from the mayor and commissioners, but I'll leave it up to her discretion.
Left turns and,
Any other comments from the committee?
We can, as far as new business, since we don't really have any right now, can we email suggestions
Oh,
for new
yeah,
business?
absolutely. I just need to notice, the agenda items are always at the discretion of the chair. I just need to notice it 7 days out.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, good.
And if I don't, Ann will yell at me and bug me. Any comments from the members of the public? Walter, are you going to disappoint me and not have comments? Sure, I'll answer that. So without, this committee has just asked the mayor and commissioners to consider asking DelDOT to do a study as they're looking at repaving Rehoboth Avenue, which is coming up in the next, they're in that process now, planning that, to have them have an expert look at the feasibility of implementing a crosswalk between 4th and 5th Streets on Rehoboth Avenue. Because a lot of people jaywalk there. So this committee has asked the mayor and commissioners to ask DelDOT to do that.
Walter Birmingham, 123 Hanopen Avenue. Yes, ma'am. Walter Birmingham, 123 Hanopen Avenue. I've seen it over several agendas, and if a crosswalk goes in midstream there, it's going to take out 8 parking spaces,
Yeah.
and then it will also have a bump out, because that's to shorten the distance. That's a safety issue, that people don't have to go from the curb. Curb gets moved out, so they have lesser places. So losing 8 parking spaces is a huge issue.
Yeah, and again, this committee is not suggesting that it happen, but DelDOT have a subject matter expert look at the feasibility of it and take whatever information or study they do back to the mayor and commissioners.
Thank you.
yeah. Thanks, Walter, that's new information. That's 8 parking spaces 24/7.
Yeah.
So we didn't know that. I'm thinking about
Any
it.
additional comments from the public? All right, well, I'm going to call the,
I just like, I won't be able to be here April 21st. I've got travel plans.
okay,
So
thank you.
just to let you know right now.
And I just, with you mentioning that, I will note, we are in person for meetings now, and we're not allowing virtual participation. So I just wanted to make sure that everyone knows that. And I'm going to call an adjournment at 2:02. I'm sorry, 3:02. All right, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Donna.